Hi, I'm Matt Gertken. I'm here with Karen Hooper, and we're going to be talking to you about the situation in Venezuela. So, Karen, we've seen massive protests in Ukraine, and we've seen the government turn over and a lot of conflict between Russia and Western powers over how to deal with that situation going forward. At the same time, there's a lot of protesting and unrest in Venezuela that has kind of gone under the radar. What's the situation right now?
Well, so we've had a few weeks of protests in Venezuela. It really started off in early February with scattered protests as a result of some student arrests in Táchira state that really escalated on February 12th when everyone came to the streets in Caracas. There was some altercations with the government forces. And at this point, we are seeing those style and size of protests being repeated every week or so. And the last one was yesterday. And, still today, it's Monday, and people are on the streets in a lot of different cities in Venezuela, from Mérida to Caracas. And so we're looking at a situation of really persistent unrest. It doesn't seem to have the same kind of, stationary character that Ukraine did. They aren't camping out, but they are marching in the streets to the tune of 100,000, 200,000 people pretty regularly, and that's really very notable.
So there was intelligence basically that was leaked from Diosdado Cabello's account. Basically, some of his emails came forward, and they seemed to show some things suggesting that he's setting up himself as an alternative to Maduro or maybe a rival. Is that kind of struggle in the political elite something we should take seriously?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, and certainly a lot of indications that there isn't entirely unity in the sort of inheritors of Chavez's regime. The leak that came out this weekend was reportedly showing Diosdado Cabello's emails, showing that he was coordinating with colectivos, which have been harassing the protesters, that he was potentially plotting against Maduro. Now, the authenticity of that leak is really in question. There's a lot of reasons to believe that it is perhaps not real.
Yeah, and if you look at a movement like Chavez's, where it's so centered on his personality and his charisma, and then he passes away and you have a succession process, that often opens the doorway for some much trickier management for the incoming administration. How is Maduro's regime faring so far?
Well, Maduro really doesn't seem like he's ruling with the same kind of authority as Chavez. He's ruling more with a collective authority of Chavez's former ministers. And when Chavez designated Maduro as his heir, Diosdado was the sort of assumed second. And we really have seen a lot of speculation over the past year that there's a power struggle between them. They do seem to be working together, but there are some signs that there's friction there, and that potentially Diosdado might be calling the shots a little bit more than you would expect from the head of the National Assembly.
So going forward, what does that mean? I mean, in particular, I think economic stability would be a major factor in how the regime is able to cope and survive. What's the economic situation, and how do you think that plays into this?
Well, the economic situation is really the foundation for most of this instability. Inflation this year reached over 50%. We expect next year, in 2014, it'll be even higher. The challenge is that they're actually having a cash flow problem, which is a major conundrum in a country that is a major oil exporter. So they don't have enough foreign exchange to finance their imports. This is causing shortages. This is causing the black market dollar to skyrocket. And we're really seeing a lot of economic instability throughout the country. There's shortages right now in Táchira state that are really outstripping the rest of the country. The government over the weekend made a lot of effort to distribute food. Thousands of tons is what they said they distributed throughout the country, but they're not distributing it in opposition strongholds, or at least that's what it appears right now. And so in a circumstance where you have a lot of scarcity, you have inflation, you have a paucity of dollars in the system, there's not a very clear answer for how they're going to address the problems that are affecting even the base of support that, was Chavez's constituents. Those people are now starting to question. We're not seeing them come out in protest of the government, but we do, hear reports that there's just a lot of unhappiness with the degree to which economic hardship is affecting everybody in the country.
Okay, so you have a chronically unstable country that seems this time to be entering into more political difficulty as a result of that. No clear solution on the horizon. What's the international impact of this?
The international impact is relatively limited, at least so far. The protests themselves are isolated to big cities. The Maduro government hasn't fallen. They have rejected offers of international mediation, but we're watching very carefully. Former Brazilian President Lula da Silva, we're also the current president of Uruguay, Mujica. They have offered to mediate between the opposition and the government. We'll see where that goes. But for now, it looks like the government's trying to solve its own problems in its own way. The big question on everyone's mind is whether or not this impacts oil exports. And the answer is probably not. The situation that affected Venezuela in 2002 when oil workers went on strike and there was a cessation of, or a significant reduction of exports to the United States, that situation is no longer the case. The unions, the people who work at the national oil company, PDVSA, they are, for the most part, on the side of the government. And the government recently gave them a 90% raise. So there's good reason to believe that they might not have the same problems internal to PDVSA that they had in 2002. Add to that the fact that most of the oil infrastructure is relatively isolated from where this unrest is happening. You would have to see a significant militant effort develop in order to degrade or interrupt oil shipments in any meaningful way.
Okay. Given that we've seen unrest underestimated across the world, we'll be continuing to watch Venezuela very closely. Thank you for joining us.